was a big adventure. When you're a 13-year-old, you have no worries. And I was born in Germany,
Where?
in Landeshut. It is now Polish. Doesn't exist anymore. And at the age of 2, the whole family was deported. It was in 1928. And I think the reason was politics. It was long before Adolf Hitler came into power. My dad was very active in the democratic movement, They had to get rid of him, so they deported him. He was deported, it was the whole family, and when you were deported, at that time, you were deported to your place of birth. Now, my dad was born in the old Austria-Hungarian Empire. But in 1919, that part became Czechoslovakia. And that's when the Czech Republic was formed after the First War. So 1918 to 1919,
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up not in his hometown because there was no place for him, There was no room. So they had a town near it, called Engelsdorf. It means Angelstown. That's where we spent 10 years, from 28 to 38. And in November of 1938, I think it was the 27th of November, my mother had, her parents were Germans, They lived across the border from the little town we ended up at in Czechoslovakia. And we could go home, so you had to have a passport to go over there. And she had one which expired on the 27th of November. And to cross the new border, which the German had put up in Czechoslovakia, when we crossed it, the guy said, it was one of the people from the SSA, was guarding the border at the train station. And he said, "With that passport you cannot come back, And it was my sister, my brother, and me, and my mother, My mother said, well, what can we do? We were going to Prague because somebody had written a letter that my dad was seriously ill and we should all come. And that was a whole fake setup. It was just a guarantee that they wouldn't let across the border, but the new border into the rest of Czechoslovakia. And we did that. And we met him at about midnight that day. And he wasn't at home at all. He was having a beer with another friend that was in the refugee camp. And it was very well. And I remember when I woke up next morning, there was a big home there it was actually for old people, and they had lots of refugees in there. And we got a bed and went to sleep, so next morning he came and he said, well, you guys are not going home anymore. So where are we going? Well, we're going to stay here. We're going to see what's happened. So we're working on it. The party's working on it, trying to get some people out of Czechoslovakia into safe haven, so to speak. And it was true. They worked. I think it was February when my dad already left for England, And we, mother and three kids, we stayed behind. They took the most, like the men that had the real danger of being caught by the Nazis. They took them out first. They were in France, they were in Norway, they were in Sweden, they were in Denmark, they were in England. Most of them were in England. They took about 5,000 of them. And that's where my dad ended up at. And it was the last train out of Prague in 1938 that we got visas for the rest of the family to go out across Poland. Gdynia or something like that. Big port in Poland. From there we got a boat and take them the next day. To be reunited after February, March, 2 months we were partying. And then we sat there and waited for an examination because they had opened the doors for Canada for 1,000 people. And there was Mr., if you ever heard of Bill Wonka, he was one of the organizers that we could get 1,000 people into Canada. And the news came just before Christmas in 1938. They got the news from Canada that the Mackenzie King and this government would allow 1,000 immigrants.
How old were you at that time?
13. I wasn't 13 then, I was 13 in that year in May, eh? Before we left I was 13. That happened in 38 and then 39 week. In June the 2nd we left Liverpool, eh?
What was the examination?
Well, this, you had to be healthy. They wouldn't take anybody that had, and they wanted young people, eh? My dad was 48 already at the time, eh? And I remember the doctor saying, like, my brother and me and my dad, we were all standing together naked, being checked out, eh? And the doctors, some official said that he was actually too old for Canada, eh? For what we had, what was expected of us, eh? And he said, well, I've got 3 children, eh? They're all young, eh? I was 13, my brother was 15, my sister was 17. So somebody kind of nodded their head and we were accepted. 2nd of June we boarded the Duchess of York and away we went. Now we left on the 2nd, we hit Quebec on the 10th, 8 days. Got off the thing, off the boat, onto a train by midnight, we were on the go to Tupper.
And
It was a big adventure. When you're 13-year-old, you have no worries. We were well looked after, we were well fed, we got a great big box of food on the train for each person, which held enough supplies to last you a whole week, eh? Because it took a week from Montreal to Tupper, eh? We landed right next to where the homestead is yet. And 3 Pullman cars, 102 people, I think. At that one transport. We came as the 5th group that left England, eh? First ones came in April to Tom's Lake and Tupper. When we arrived here, it was the 16th of June, 39, and we walked to Tom's Lake that evening, because we arrived here about 4:30 in the afternoon at Tupper. So we caught a ride with the only truck they had by a fellow by the name of Fred. I never did know his last name, and he gave us a ride the rest of the way up to and we went to visit in the 2nd little house and right about where the Thomas Lake School is now. The name was Kreutzer. And Mrs. Kreutzer is still alive today in Calgary. And she invited us in. The first lady wouldn't let us in her house, that little 14 by 18 house. The second lady said, yes, come on in. She showed us she was had just opened a can of tomatoes, I remember that. And she said, look, there's whole tomatoes in there. And they're canned, because there was no fresh fruit, eh? So my mother and my brother and me, we were there. My sister didn't come. So we had a good visit, and then we walked back to Tupper. We had to stay in the car for one more night at the stockyard at Tupper, eh? And the following day they hauled it up with our stuff, and it's all the day when the train came to pick up the cars. And then we had a tent in Tom's Lake for 10 days. And after that we got our fancy big 14 by 18 bungalow. There's no ceiling. 1 ply walls, 1 stove. And they gave us some kind of material for straw mattresses, and they took it to a straw stacker across the creek, and we dug it out by hand, and there was a real old straw thing. Well, that was just like cement, that stuff. But it was nice clean straw once you got it out, and we stuffed our straw mattresses nice and full and packed them home.
what time of year was this?
It was June the 16th we arrived. On the 17th we were to Tom's Lake, so we had 10 days in the tent, and it was in the 27th. But the 28th we moved into our house. The houses were built at Tom's Lake, and there was a row, and you go down the old highway from where the school is, there's about 14 or 16 of them all in a row. And then there was another row on the other side of the creek heading west, same amount. And we were on the opposite side of the new highway, where the big barn is. And there was about 14 or 16 houses there too. We got one of those, about 5 houses from the front. We were supposed to work as a group, as a community for 5 years actually. That was the plan, original. We all worked together, but it didn't work out that way. Because my dad was looking after the pigs, somebody else was looking after the horses, somebody was looking after the cows. The women were being taught how to milk a cow. We never knew how, maybe one person out of all the hundreds we had. So till all that was done, the time went by, and it was over 2 years before we got out of there. We left in 1942. We had cows at the local, at the centre of Tom's Lake. We had pigs, we had horses, and somebody has to look after them. So my dad got the job of looking after the young pigs, and we did that for until 1942. We raised over 1,000 from 41 to 42, I think. And they were given out to the settlers, 4 at a time, when they were 6, 8 weeks old. And then the whole thing was dissolved, because everybody had moved out into their quarter of land they had found, And we were one of the last ones to leave the central location of Tom's Lake, That land that we're on today, where you've been a few times, was left behind from a fellow that was moving to the city, because when the war broke out, they needed tradespeople in Toronto, Hamilton, Montreal, all over. And some of those fellows that came in there could see that they were not made to be farmers, but they had a trade of a carpenter, a toolmaker, whatever. And they said, well, we'll move to Toronto, we'll go here. And the fellow that had put his name on that quarter came to my dad one night and he said, I know you're looking for land, and there wasn't no land around anywhere. That wasn't spoken for. And he said, I'll tell you, I will go to the office tomorrow morning, and I will tell him that I'm leaving, and if you come right away, you can probably get that quarter of land. That's why we got that quarter of land yet. And it belonged to a streetcar company in Winnipeg. And they had to buy it from the streetcar company into the Tate Creek Development Company. And it was, when I got the contract here, it was close to $600 for that acre. Well, the rest of the land around Tupper was 50 cents an acre, and the more prime land was $1 an acre. But we paid close to 600. And he did that over 10 years. It's like a mortgage. So it was a tough start. Once we realized what had happened, and after 2 years, we no longer received any money from that sort of development company, because they were going broke. We got $15 a month for a family of 5, and we lived quite good on it. Well, food was cheap. A whole pailful of eggs, 25 cents. A bag of flour was 90 cents. That's 49 pounds. 1 pound was for the bag, which was useful for making a curtain or a dress. It was kind of a pattern on it. So it was like I say, I never had any problem. But then I missed a lot of schooling, I went 4 years in Europe, and I got a year and a half in Canada. And at 15, I had to go to work. Since my dad was looking after all the hogs they had, they finally moved our house to where the barns were. They were west of Tom's Lake. So we lived right behind where we worked. They put up a 2-acre fence or so. And there was a long barn built out of slabs for the pigs, which was a little primitive thing, but it had to do. And they did. And then you had to watch this. And they were born. There was an airtight heater in one of the stalls, and the brutes thought that they were going to have young ones. They were moved close to the, so when the young ones came, they wouldn't freeze, eh? It did work, and we had quite good results. But it was primitive and very labor intensive. Well, the first job I did was Christmas Day on 1940. Somebody came into the yard, my brother was still home. He said, we need 8 guys to load lumber into the boxcar at the station at Tupper, if we couldn't. That was on Christmas Day, 21st of December. So we said, sure. We made $2 that afternoon, each of us. $2. First money made in Canada. And after that, well, threshing time came. You know how to run a team of horses. Well, you get out there, you go pitch bundles and haul them to the separator. Do your thing.
What'd you do with that first $2?
That first $2 I kept for a long, long time. And I finally bought a coat from Eaton's, which hung on the porch down there for don't know how many years after I wore it. And my nephew Walter, who lives in 19th, wore it, because we raised him down there from 43 till 10, 15 years later, eh? And then I think it got thrown away. But I hung on to that $2 for a long time. Yeah, because they had 3 tractors which were running day and night, breaking land, eh? And there was enough manpower on to do that, eh? And then the next spring came, well, let's have to get it ready to seed, well, to pick all the roots, so it's done by hand. And they disked the land, they got it smoothened out and seeded it. First crop was pretty good. Second crop wasn't bad either, and the third was a total failure in 41. It never stopped. Well, they cut some of the grain in August, of barley, and about the middle of the beginning of September it started to rain, and it rained every day. And it never quit till crop. I don't know when it quit raining. But I know in February we went out, it had snowed, everything was flat, it was a real good crop, and everything was flat. So, and we already had, everybody had some animals to feed. So what did we feed them, eh? We needed grain for the pigs, and we needed hay, which we didn't have either. So they said, well, we give everybody a plot of 10 acres, you cut it by hand, eh, in the size, and haul it home, best way you know how. Well, it didn't work very good either. For the pigs, they finally brought in wheat from Saskatchewan, and rail cars had to go down, and the horses couldn't even pull 30 bushels of wheat, because the road was so mucky, it was just not possible, eh? So you took a little lesson. You hauled it home, a mill for chopping it. It was a real disaster actually. But we managed to get through the winter.
I wanted to know about your first winter.
The first winter,
In
well,
that building.
I went to school. We ended up with an airtight heater as an addition to the cook stove, which was plumbed into the same pipe, which was only one roof jack for the smoke to go out. And the men would go out in the bush and to get fire when they get a load, so every so often they'd take your sweets out which you had got and you rocked it up, eh? And if it wasn't quite dry, well, it was too bad. You had to get a good fire going to burn it. And it was never too hot. They finally came around and put the inside walls into these little shacks and filled them with sawdust. And then they put a ceiling in it, but there was nothing above the ceiling to keep the heat in, so it was always cold, eh? But we survived it. You go to bed and you make sure you got 3 or 4 blankets and
Now,
put your socks on to sleep, because your feet would get cold.
so
One of the things you talked about was all this freedom because you could go make a fire wherever you want. So
Mhm.
back home,
That
you
was
had
not,
a lot more rules then.
that back home it was not allowed. You had to have a permit to pick blueberries in the village forest, which we had. If you wanted to make firewood, you had to have permission to cut the tree down. When the logging was on, there was logging sites, which was done by hand. You could purchase the stumps when the logs were gone. You could grub them out by hand and make them into firewood for a certain amount of money. I don't know what the price was, but you had to pay for the stump. And you would buy so many stumps in a square, and then you have to go to work.
Now, how old were you when you met your wife?
When I met my wife, well, when we first met, I was about 22, 23, 22, 23. Yeah, about 23. Mm-hmm.
And where did you
Uh,
see her?
There was no...
What happened after that? How long did it take you to romance her, to convince her, without bonking her on the head that she should come and marry you?
It was a very primitive setup. But we had a soccer team in Tom's Lake, which started about 42, 43, 44, over there. And then we walked to Tom's Lake to practice on Wednesdays and on Sundays. And then we found out we had a soccer team in Dawson Creek. From Dave Spittle, the butcher, had put one together. And pretty soon we had some rivalry that we could play. And it was at one of the soccer games. It was an anniversary, so it must have been the 10th anniversary of our rivalry, 49. We were playing against the the Dawson Creek Rangers. And I was always playing left wing because I could run very good. And it was just towards the end of the game, Bill Dyke from Dyke's Construction in Dawson, he was way bigger than I was. He was playing defense on the other team, and the ball was coming very high, and I was looking into the sun because it was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I jumped for it, and he did, and we got our heads together, and he cracked me open, the blood was running on my face, and you sweat like a pig, So I thought, well, I guess we had lost it anyway. I thought, I'll just walk over there and sit down. And we had a guy that had a first aid kit, and who comes? This young lady comes, which was Linda. And she had also worked for a doctor, and she knew all about this. I said, you know, I'm not really hurt that bad. Well, the blood was running over my face, and so they got it. But I said, I would need a drink. Get me a bottle of orange crusher, something. And she did get that. That's where our romance started. That's the first closer contact. We looked at each other and wondered who the hell we were, I guess. And from there on, she was working in Dawson Creek at the time. Actually, she was working at Heights when I met her the first time. And a week later, she had applied in Dawson Creek at the hospital. So she worked there, and then I take the train to town once in a while and go see her.
What would you guys do?
Well, you go to a show. You could sit at the nurse's home. They had an old house beside the old hospital, which was right at Sylvan Place. There must have been about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 girls in there. Some nurses, some practical nurses, some kitchen help. But they had a nice living room where we could sit there and we could talk. It was private. They had a kind of an orderly system in there, those girls. Whenever somebody's boyfriend came, the rest of them would disappear. They would go upstairs into their rooms. And like Olive Burke, well, you know Olive, her and my wife became very good friends right after, right at the beginning. And so we always got along well. Like I say, that's where the romance took place.
Okay. So then,
And it only lasted till 1952. We got married.
how did you propose to her?
Well, that was easy. I mean, we didn't have a car, we had nothing, we walked around. In the summertime, you could walk anywhere. She lives 3 miles from where I lived at Tupper. We meet on the railroad track somewhere because she'd come up and she'd come home at night from the train and she ended up there about 5:30 in the afternoon, And she used to write me a letter. I said, well, I'm going to be home tomorrow night. We can meet at 6 o'clock or at 7 o'clock. I'll come up the track and you come down the track. Which we did. And I mean, it's daylight till midnight in those days, in the summertime. So that's how it developed. We didn't really have to propose, but we finally decided that we were old enough and we were good enough that we should maybe tie the knot and start out. That's what we did.
And then she came to live with you.
And then, well, after we had decided what we were going to do, that was fine. But I said, well, you know, I'm going to have to build a house. And I said, I don't have much money. I was working on the railroad part-time. And she was working full-time at the hospital for, I think, $78 a month. Well, she said, you know, I can help. And I said, well, okay. I said, I'm going to go and we'll cut a bunch of trees down and I can haul them home and get a sawmill and then we'll cut them up in our yard. And her brother-in-law, where she lived, said, well, you can come down the creek here. We got lots of big spruce. I help you cut them over. You can have some. Haul some spruce home too. I don't know how many board feet of lumber I made, but I made enough to build that house down there, that other one. The one you still go to today. But it took me all winter to get the logs, then I hauled them home in the spring with the wagon. During the summer they brought the sawmill in and we cut them up. And then I started digging a hole after hours from the railroad. Then the first winter came, about 1950. Had the whole dock, I put the floor over it, and the railroad was rebuilding all their bridges, and they had all these big cedar cut-offs from the pilings. And I said, well, could I have some of those? Oh, sure, you can take them all. So I took as many as I could, hauled them home, and put those pilings in the corner of the basement, And then built the house over it. And the others, foundation, I just used shorter ones, dug a hole and put them in for. Then I built the house. I worked all winter on it, and I know it was just November, and I said, well, I think I could work on it all winter, but I have no windows, and I don't have any money to buy windows. And we looked in the Eaton catalog, and she said, well, what kind of windows? Well, I said, well, they have windows in there about 4 feet high and 2 feet wide, and I said, I would need about 13 of those. But I said, they're $75 for them. And there was no money to buy windows with because my paycheck did not reach that far. So I approached Linda, which was my girlfriend. We were going to get married. I said, what do you think we should do? Shall I board it up and quit for the winter, or do you think we could find some money? And she said, well, how much money do you need? I said, well, about $75. And she said, well, I'm making about $78 a month, and I'll take my next paycheck and I'll give it to you, and you go order the windows from Eaton's. So we did just that, and I had 13 windows within about 2 weeks. And they're still in the house today, installed them, and I worked all winter with the airtight heater in the unfinished bedroom with the pipe out the back window. And by spring, it was 1952, I said, well, when are we going to get married? Well, you could do it in May. I said, well, sounds like a good time. And the Catholic preacher, Father Getz, he was playing soccer with us too. He came by once in a while to see how I was doing with the house. He said, "Oh," he says, "you might even get this done, did you know?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'm working on it." I said, "It won't be all done, but I said, it'll be fit to live in." "Oh, yeah, that's good enough." So we finally had set a date, and he came by one night and he said, "You know," he says, "I need $5. I said, "What do you need $5 for?" "Well, you're going to buy a license to get married." I said, "You know, I don't have $5. As I tell you, you go and see Linda tomorrow. You're going to drive to Dawson anyway. Go to the hospital." "No," he says, "I'm going to go there anyway." I said, "Well, there you are." I think she probably has $5. It's my license. And then he said, "Okay," he said, "no problem." He went. Then we really laughed about this. I said, "Well, so you're going to get married, you're going to have to buy yourself a license. There's no other way around here. I don't have the money."
Yeah.
And then we got married, 31st of May 1952. And her sister butchered a pig, and we had a family affair, and it rained like heck when we came out of church, which was at Tupper. The church had finally burned down. Some hippies burned it down a few years later, but we were married in it. And Sherry Taylor had a car here, took us home, but it was so muddy we couldn't even get close to the house. So we walked across the creek, and they brought rubber boots over so we could get rubber boots on, walk over the creek. It was primitive, but you know, when you're young, it was an experience. It was just wonderful. There's nothing wrong with it. And then we started out. Linda said, "Well, I'm going to quit working." I said, "Well," I said, "I can't quit. I have to." But I got to work I worked till the end of November that year on the railroad. We didn't get a heavy frost, so we could work longer. And then I get my last paycheck about Christmas time. And then I worked at somewhere in the sawmill. I can't even remember where it was. So we made out. Then she went back to Heist for a few weeks to work, and then back to Dawson part-time. We muddled through it. I didn't have a trade. I didn't have a steady job for years. I spent 7 years on the railroad. First 3 years as a seasonal employee, and then was unsteady for 4 more, summer and winter, which was that was a good feeling because it was a steady income. But then the work got to the point, and the feeling being on the railroad was kind of a vague feeling that this wasn't going to last forever. And my back was giving out. I said, "Well, it would be nice to work somewhere else." And a friend of mine that worked with me said, "Well, let's take next week, we take a day off together, we drive to Dawson Creek and see if we can get some different jobs, eh?" So we both drove. I didn't have transportation yet. He had a pickup, so we drove up. I said nothing to nobody. And he got a job within about an hour, and I got one about an hour later. He went into a garage of Dawson Creek Motors as a grease monkey and handyman, and I started at Farm Supply as a truck driver, hauling farm machinery and setting machinery up. They paid $200 a month at that time, and we worked 6 days a week. And it was expensive because I had just bought a new pickup for $21.50, which I didn't have the money for either. We had sold the cows because we had planned on it, and I think I had a debt of about $1,800 at $80 a month, and $80 a month from a $200 check doesn't need much for gas to drive daily from the farm to Dawson Creek and back, eh? So it was a struggle, but we managed it. And Linda finally went to work with me and worked in the shoe department at the co-op in Dawson Creek. So then we both worked together in town. But the only thing, my job was very independent from the hours I had to put in. In the springtime, I come home at midnight, eh? and she couldn't drive. But my friend, which drove home every day, I said, well, if I'm not home, you just take my truck and you go home and you bring it back next day with Linda, eh? And I'll find a place to sleep. I'll sleep in the old farm supply truck, and then we'll carry on like that. So we did that. It worked.
What was the best job you ever had?
The best job I ever had was on the Alaska Highway in 1943. One of my first legal job in Canada. When the Alaska Highway started, they were looking for employees. But since I wasn't old enough to work on the outside, they said, well, actually you have no training, but we need people to work in the kitchen, wash dishes, clean. And they called them cookies. You work as a cookie. And I said, whatever you want to call it, eh? And they hired me in Dawson Creek, and from the moment you were hired, you would get paid. And then you had to wait for transportation to get to the job, which was at mile 159 past Fort Nelson. In other words, 459 miles. I had a Toad River in the camp. So it took me, I think, 9 days to get out of Dawson. And we were fed in the camp in Dawson. We could sleep there. We just kind of loafed around. And then we finally made it. There was a bus, took us up north. Had to wait at the Peace River. There was a ferry. I think it took 3 hours to get on the ferry, to get across to the other side. Then we made it to Fort Nelson, got stuck with the bus once, because the driver was a new grade, and there were 2 drivers. They would never stop, eh? And it was night, he got off the thing and got it stuck. So they got everybody out to push it. Couldn't do it. But there was a guy on there from Quebec, and he said, you know, I just went over there, there's a construction camp, and there's a bunch of cats there, and they're still warm. And he says, I'm a cat skinner. If I go over there and start one and bring it over, I'm sure they're serviced enough to, and if you guys have a hook somewhere, we'll pull this thing out, eh? So away he went, and pretty soon he was coming across with this cat, eh? And it had a cable on the back. And I said, well, I wonder where he's going to hook it. And the bus driver had there's a door in the front, below the headlight. There could be a hook in there. And they hooked the thing in there, and he got on and drove it onto the highway and parked the cat. And the 2 drivers, they had to report what had to be done, what happened, eh? And they agreed that they wouldn't say nothing because they had got out. And the driver for the cat said, he says, I won't mention it. I'm get you right here, eh? So we drove to Fort Nelson. And there it all stopped because it rained some more and we couldn't go on, eh? But I caught a ride with another truck and an old fella from Hines Creek. And we got about 10 miles down the road. The highway police came, stopped the truck, eh? 3 in the cab was against the rules, eh? No way. So he was 60 years old and I was not even 20, eh? So I said, well, I guess I'll crawl on the load in the back. It's a load of lumber, and I laid on it. And we drove all the way to Toad River.
So why was it the best job? Like what?
Well, it was the first job, and it paid $110 a month to just wash dishes, and you paid a third back to the government, but I still had 70-some bucks to send home, eh? Because we had no money, eh? And after about a month there, the French cook said, he says, you're supposed to come to the office, eh? And I said, oh, I probably get fired, eh? What did go wrong, eh? And I went over there, and the lady said, oh, okay. Yeah, he says, you know, you're making a second cook out of you. And I said, but I don't know anything about cooking. She says, it doesn't matter. It's wartime. And it pays $175 a month. So when I got back over to the thing and I had a few smiles on my face, I guess the cook said, well, he says, was it all that bad? I says, no. I says, but I don't know how to cook. He says, don't worry about it. You're going to start making the toast tomorrow morning. You've seen how we do it. Take a fork and it's on the wood stove and You flip it before it burns and do your thing. Or pretty soon it was pancakes. Then I had to go cut meat in the meat house. It was glorious, eh? And my take-home pay was $110 a month.
What did it feel like to move into that place as your home? What did that feel like?
Well, it felt very good, actually. I had not just built it, but it was actually my own idea, and I had lots of help from my wife already before we were married, and I was able to do it. And it felt very good. It gives you a feel of satisfaction that you accomplished something that you can call your own and you can live in it.
What gives you a sense of satisfaction today?
Well, I'm so happy about the fact that I was able to do it. And we had 50 years of married life, 2 adopted boys. We still can use the place today. So I guess I didn't do too shoddy a job. I remember my grandparents, especially on my mom's side. On my father's side, my grandma lived with us. She actually raised me from the time I was born till we left in '39. But my grandfather on my mother's side, we had to walk 1 hour to go into Germany. That's where he lived, eh? Just across the border. And when he saw us coming, Mom, and maybe 2, sometimes 3, my sister, my brother, and me along, eh? He stopped everything what he was doing, and he got Grandma involved to find some money. He was going to the butcher block and to the baker shop. And we said, well, we'll come along, and Grandma said, no, they're probably tired from the long walk, eh? And we said, no, we're not tired at all. We want to come along, eh? Because as soon as we got to the butcher, you got a chunk of sausage to eat, and at the baker shop you got a piece of cake or a cookie. And you know, I was only 6 years old, and I already went across, and for my birthday he promised me a red enamel cup with my name on it. And that was before I went to school. And I knew when my birthday was, and the neighbor's boy in the same apartment, I said to him, I said, you know what, you want to come along? We can go to Germany. I can see my grandfather, eh? Because I know he's bought me that cup, eh? So we said nothing to nobody. We took off together. And we got home about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I did get my cup. And I stuck it in my pocket and put my hand in it, stuck it across the border. My mother was waiting for me, and it was not a very good scene, but I think they were glad we were home. Yeah, he was one of the kindest persons around. He would never renege on a promise. He was always glad to see us. Right. I never personally had a runaway, but my brother had one, and the supervisor had come by. We were chopping grain at the middle of the yard at Tom's Lake, and the noise from the chopping mill and the grain kernels flying around through the air, they got pretty nervous, and the supervisor said, well, you better tie those horses up because they're going to run away on. And my brother said, oh no, they will stand there, and he barely got it out. They took off. Well, by the time you catch him, the wagon is wrecked and the harness is wrecked. So you learn your lesson in a heck of a hurry, eh? Then it's always too late. So they got the horses hitched to the wagon, and he gave Linda the reins on the ground, and he crawled up on the wagon, and as soon as he was up there, the horses took off, eh?
So he didn't have the reins.
He didn't, she didn't quite make it with the reins, eh? And the horses have heard down, well, they missed the turnout by my house. They went in between and got in between the trees. Well, the rack wouldn't go through it, so they went anyway. And then they tore the harness, left the rack and the wagon there, and went up to the gate together, harnessed. And then they stopped, it was closed. So then they got the horses back into the barn. The wagon was wrecked. Harness was partly wrecked. So they left it sit there and like home at 6 o'clock. I said, oh, what the hell did this? Whose idea? Oh, it was Opa's idea.
Yeah.
Then I said, you know, those damn horses, they're so spoiled. As soon as he got on the wagon, they took off. I said, well, they're used to that. They hang the lines up on the top peg on the A-rack, and I crawl up the back, one jump, and I'm in the thing, and away we go. Yeah, before Opa got on, they were gone.
Do you remember your first Christmas in Canada?
I have a faint idea of it, yes.
Or let me put it this way. The first Christmases, what were they like for you in Canada?
Well, we were poor people. We didn't have any money. They had a mother that used to knit. You get a pair of mitts, maybe. Yeah. And when I went to school in 1939 to 1940, in school I think I got a 5-year diary that came from someplace. It was a little present from the teacher. We all had a present at that school, and we had a fabulous teacher too. Her first year of teaching. She was a wonderful person. Women had to learn to make something out of the raw product, out of whatever meat you had. And you know, you're surprised how some became really good at it. Yeah.
Like Mom.
And I was very fortunate, yeah. She made a big effort of learning how to cook as soon as we got married. As soon as we started living together, she worked hard at it. And I know I came home from the road one night. I said, well, there's this frying pan sitting on the front step, and I said, well, you know, I said there was something in it. But I don't know. And she was in the barn. She seen me coming, and I guess she wanted to hide that before I seen it. By the way, she said, this is what's supposed to be your supper sitting there. But I said, I had to go to the barn quick, and I left it on the stove and I burned it. I said, well, so you get the dog over from my parents. He'll probably eat it. But he says, he might not eat it, you know, it's burnt pretty bad. So I don't know what we had that day, but we laughed about it, that's it.
Wow.
Between 41 and 42, I can't remember, we raised it up in 41, and then there was such a lousy fall that it never quit raining. There was nothing but mud, so they waited till it was froze. It could have been 42 when it came down here. In May of 42 is when we moved into it. It came down through the bush behind there.
So what's your plan with this? What are you doing?
I just got a big tree on top of those 2 pieces of wood. Like that one.
Oh, I see. And what's the idea behind all of this? What are you going to be doing?
Then I will take a snag off just like that for the top.
And then that's going to be attached to the side of the house to move it?
No,
No?
it's just pick the house up and go underneath where the walls are.
Oh!
Your side. Make the skid out of it. I'm cutting the stump of the slant. Wrap a cable around each trend, put a cross piece on it together with the cable for something to pull on. Put a piece in the middle so it doesn't suck together. And then all we need is some big outfit to pull it.
Pull it. So the flat side of that tree is the bot. Oh, it's up for the house to sit on.
I mean, it's going to be rotten anyway, but it's at least half-assed, straight and level, see?
Yeah. And the strongest part would be under the walls.
It's under the wall, eh? If it doesn't fall apart, we make it. You know, the house itself, there's nothing wrong with the boards. From 6 inches from the bottom up. If the sawdust falls out into the walls, well, so what? It's double ply lumber with paper in between. And I'll take the siding off and put something else on the outside. It's wired for a light there. It's wired inside. So it's kind of a thing that it's a waste, eh?
Yeah, it's definitely useful, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's kind of, put a bigger door in the end. With the crane, the track. I can use this door for an entrance again.
Yeah.
That's the original door.
So this is where the old house was situated?
Yeah, right there. And it was supposed to be sitting here, because this was the high spot, eh? And when we came around the corner, the tractor started to boil. And he said it's going to quit any moment. And he was over too far to the side. I said, well, right here, stop it. So that's where it became.
So that's how it ended up in a slightly different location?
It ended up in a bit of a hole, eh? Like here. And there wasn't much difference in height, but it's a bit higher here than there. Yeah, I remember that night in 41, these guys came out from logging. I think it was Mr. Masanek and somebody else. They had a big old LA case with lugs on it, and they came out of the bush. They had some lunch and hooked onto the thing, and 3 jerks, and it was loose. And Tom's in Riverside. That's where the house was, eh? It was on the north side of the Tate Creek. And they just hooked onto it, and maybe went. Ground was froze. There was snow. Shit, it just took off like nothing. Yeah. And then we got down here. Well, we went up to Hagenbart's for lunch. Left the tractor sit here. They'd run out of water almost, and the engine block was almost. I said, boy, if that thing starts again. It started again after an hour. We drove her home.
Lucky.
Yeah. Put snow in for cooling. And yes. It was a big adventure.